Howdy guys, it's Joe here, and during the last few weeks I've had a lot of people ask me the question, who do you think is the hardest character to master in Overwatch? And I feel like my opinion on this changes very often. Some characters I feel like are always very hard to play, while some other characters I feel like are just hard to play in current metas. So this list will kind of supply both of those things. Some heroes you could say are pretty easy to play, but in the meta that they're fitting in, you have to know them very well, know how to position, know how to stay safe, know when to go in, know when to stay out, and a lot of people just kind of fail at all those levels, while some of the best players can still play them very effectively, even though they might not be the most meta pick. So do keep that in mind. As well, I do want to mention that I feel like any character that honestly isn't way too good right now is probably some of the hardest characters to master, just because you ought to play them pretty much perfectly in order to carry, but I'm going to be a little bit more general than that, and I probably won't include much of those characters, just so you can keep that kind of out of your mind. Anyways, with that said, let's just get started. So first off, I'm gonna say Hanzo, and I feel like a lot of people kind of flip-flop on this. They're not sure if he's very hard to play, too luck dependent to be good at, or really anywhere in between. But I'm gonna say that he's a pretty hard character to play, because if you aren't very good at the character, you become extremely inconsistent. And consistency is one of the things that is most important, honestly, in climbing, and one of the things that makes it, in my opinion, hardest to climb when you're playing someone that isn't way too consistent. Now, of course, we have some players like Seagull that can make up for his inconsistencies, for his weird projectile, for people just being able to simply walk out of the way. He can predict really well, he can aim really well, and he can know what's going on really well. But for a lot of people, they just simply can't, and they just don't really know exactly how to play him. Picking him up out of the box obviously isn't the easiest thing to do, and really you have to make sure that you do have amazing positioning, know exactly when to put out those scatter arrows, know when to put out those shifts as well, and just make sure that you get really good at close range headshots, and you should be able to beat people like Genji and people like Tracer that would traditionally counter you if you become really good at the character. It is quite hard, it is quite awkward, and even getting a few kills in the backline can be weird at times, but I will say, it can be worth it. Now, with Zenyatta, I feel like he's kind of in the same boat a little bit. I mean, he's another projectile character that still is kind of awkward to play, and you still do have to be able to do some really nice shots, but I don't feel like he's quite the same as far as, being solely based off getting damage and getting projectiles, but the other parts of his kits I feel like can make him a little bit harder, especially in the meta that we're currently in. Right now, this support currently has to be able to deal a lot of damage, be able to get amazing callouts, get picks with your alternate fire, and even tank on flankers by yourself, or at least deter them until your teammates come, which can be very difficult. Especially as Zenyatta, if you aren't really good at aiming at close range, you're just gonna get bodied by a lot of the very strong flankers right now, like Tracer and Genji. As well, I would normally say that Ana's a little bit harder to play than Zenyatta, and I would have put her on this list, but right now, Ana's not quite in the same boat. Zenyatta really has to focus on getting damage, on discording people, and on healing people all at the same time, and while Ana used to focus on getting a lot of damage and then healing tanks, right now, since her damage was nerfed, we see a lot more focus on healing the tanks and healing her teammates, and her damage is kind of nerfed to a point where we don't really see it way too much anymore. So we really won't say that she's quite as difficult to be played anymore, at least compared to what we saw a while ago. Still, I'm just going to say it's a little bit harder for Zen to pull off what some of the stuff Ana can do with ease, and that's probably why he's a little bit harder as well. Now, to Reaper, it really all just succumbs to the current season. I know a lot of people say that Reaper isn't way too hard. All you have to do is just walk up melee range close up to them, shoot them a few times in the face with an easy shotgun blast, and then they're dead. But I'm going to say that there are some problems with this. One big problem is that Roadhog is extremely powerful in the current meta, and completely bodies Reaper for the most part. If the Roadhog is any good, knows how to save their hook, and just waits for the Reaper to get close up, he can't really do way too much, which does hurt the character a lot. As well with that, in this season, it's really hard for you to make some picks. Lucio is extremely hard for you to kill anymore, almost unkillable if you can't get the jump on him, and of course, Ana is still really awkward to kill as this character because she can just put you to sleep and then of course heal herself a little bit, and Mercy can decently escape, mainly against Reaper. A lot of the other DPS you can't, but against Reaper she can pretty easily if she has teammates. You really have to be positioned greatly with this character, and especially with Soldier being so good as he is right now, and being such a hard counter in the current state that he is versus Reaper, where he can beat Reaper a lot of the times middle range, closest range, and far range, and where Reaper really just has a lot better of an ult and a bit more escape, it can be kind of hard to pull out the guy. Now, of course, if you do know exactly your position, and if you do know the maps really well, you know how to flank, you know when to flank, you have really good team communication, you can often do okay as Reaper, but I feel like that's what makes him so hard. He's not a person that you can just easily pick up and play and win a lot of games with up in high ranks, because he has so much people that he can't really destroy as easily anymore. Maybe that'll change in the near future, but at least for now in Season 4, in the current meta we're in, that's what I'm feeling about this guy. So for Genji or Tracer, I feel like they are pretty much in the same boat, but I decided to go to Genji because his positioning is a little bit weirder and I feel like a little bit harder and something that people aren't quite as used to as Tracer, but I will say both of them are very difficult. For Genji though, I feel like there are two types of Genjis that do kind of make this a little bit misleading for how hard he is. Now, the thing that might do that mostly is in Plat/Diamond and a lot below, where Genjis can usually just get away with poking for a long time at far range, charging up a lot of ultimate, and then just going in and winning with an ultimate combo. You know, they have someone like an Ana with the Genji ult, with someone like a Zarya, and then they just pop through the enemy team, and that's all they really do. They're just getting some nice ultimate combos and then winning, which looks pretty easy, and honestly, it's one of the easier parts about Genji's kit, especially if people can't aim way too well. Genji can be killed in his ultimate, and it's not super hard as well. There's a lot of characters like McCree that can do pretty well, Soldier in his own ultimate, and even Tracer can kind of snipe Genji while he's using his ultimate, which we see a little bit more in higher ranks, and that's where I feel like Genji does become a lot harder. People kind of figure out, of course, first off, how to counter your ult, how to shoot you in it, and then other people just figure out how to counter you in general. People's aim becomes a lot better. A lot of times when you're playing Genji, people just can't happen to shoot you. You're jumping all over the place, but later up, people definitely can, and it's a little bit harder to play him. As well with this, it gets to the point sometimes where you can't just run around in the middle of the fights and then go after the supports and go after all those people, because you're going to be in the middle of the enemy team and they could just all focus you and all take you down because their aim is finally good enough to do that. I feel like it really just takes a lot of time to learn the positioning of Genji, learn exactly what to do and where to be, as if you're too far up, you're probably going to die, and if you're too far back, you're not really going to make an impact. You also as well, just like Reaper, have to learn a lot of the maps, know where to be, know how to get around, and know when to go in on a team fight. You really have to make sure that you're not going to just get wombo comboed by the enemies, and it's something that does take a little while to learn. Again, I wouldn't say that he's way too hard once you're in the lower ranks, but again, getting a little bit higher, he just becomes a bit harder to pick. With that said, there are a lot of really good Genjis that make up for this fact that I feel like he gets a bit harder to pick, but my point still stands. And for McCree and Widow, it's pretty obvious that that's the thing I was going to pick. These characters are well known as some of the hardest characters to play, and I feel like as metas have gone by, they become harder and harder to play. Maybe not this exact meta as much for Widowmaker as during the tank meta. Whew, that was a hard character to play, but even still, it's really hard as it is right now. Of course, the basic things is Widowmaker and McCree, you need pretty much amazing aim, much better than the majority of other characters at middle, far, and close range. You need really fast reaction time, really good tracking or flick shotting, one or the other, and it just takes a long time to practice these characters and to learn these characters. You need a lot more mouse control, and with that, you'd think, that could kind of make up for not needing as good positioning, but in the power that they're at right now, it doesn't really weigh too much. McCree and Widow are okay, but they often get outclassed by Soldier in the majority of ways. So you have to make up for it in first your aim, hitting a lot more bullets, getting a lot more headshots than him, and kind of that stuff. But as well, your positioning, as he can position a little bit worse. He has that healing, he has that movement, while you don't really have that stuff as much. You don't have quite as much burst, and just overall, it's just going to be a little bit harder for you, and you've got to position yourself a little bit better, get in and out a lot more, hide behind shields a lot more, and just kind of going from there. I'm going to say that's really why they're just a bit harder. They're not quite as strong as some other characters, mainly be Soldier, and you're going to have to put in a little bit more effort and a little bit more work and become very good at the character in order to pick them at right now, because you just can't really abuse their power like some other people. With that said, if you do put in the time and you do put in the effort, I feel like they still can definitely be worth it. I especially really like to see Soldier McCree and of course Soldier Widowmaker. Soldier has that nice overall DPS damage, he's overall a very good character, and then McCree can either just, get even more middle range damage, make it very hard to deal with your offensive or defensive comp, and then of course Widowmaker can get huge picks on people like Pharaoh, people like Mercy, just random backline people, and of course Zenyatta is a very nice pick to get right now as we're seeing a little bit more of him as well. Overall, I'm going to say these guys are pretty strong, they are pretty nice, and I do enjoy the characters a lot. They're some of my favorites. But it's going to take a while, and a lot of the time, they're going to take a lot more work than other characters, but if you're willing to put in that work and willing to put in that hard effort, it's probably going to be worth it. So maybe give it a try yourself and just keep playing those characters, and those are, of course, the characters I feel like are probably the hardest to get used to and to win with. And there you go. That's at least my own opinion. Now, of course, as always, my opinion may not equal your opinion, and that is completely okay. I do not think that I have the best opinion in the entire world. It's just what I'm personally feeling, and I just feel like a lot of these lists are just kind of, hearing someone say their opinion, seeing if yours is similar or different, and if mine is different in any way, tell me in the comment section down below, and tell me why. Tell me who you think is personally very hard to play, and why they're hard to play. I'd really like to read all you guys' comments. Leave a like if you want to see any more stuff like this in the future. Subscribe if you want to see any more as well. As always, guys, thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.